welcome to what will be the last DMRC meeting of the year. Apologies for the slight delay getting started, just one or two little IT glitches there, with apologies and substitutes.
Yes, convener, an apology from Councillor Doran.
And moving on to declarations of interest or declarations for transparency purposes.
Thanks, convener. I will be speaking on the application on item 4. I will not be taking part in the first two items as I was on holiday and didn't have the actual details or was not on the site visits.
Yeah, that's correct. So you'll have to not be involved in item 3, but you can participate in item 4, Councillor Durno. That's correct. Okay, thanks for that. And no other declarations of interest. Okay, we shall move on to item 3, which is 2B Princess Street, Monteith, and members did a site visit there this morning. So if I can hand over to our planner, Katie Mackay, to briefly take us through this one.
Just going to start the PowerPoint presentation. If you can let me know if you can see it okay.
Yes, okay.
Looks fine to me. Yep.
Brilliant. Good morning. I'm Katie Mackay, the Development Plan Team at Angus Council, present today as an independent planning advisor to the committee. I have had no previous involvement in the application and I have no conflict of interest relative to the case, applicant or any interested party. The committee is asked to consider an application for a review seeking the removal of condition 1 applied to the approval of the proposal for the conversion of the existing garage store to form a single-storey dwelling house at 2B Princess Street, Monteith. This relates to a requirement for the proposal to contribute towards affordable housing, secondary education and open space, as the development is considered to have cumulatively met the threshold for affordable housing and developer contributions. The case officer report, notice of review and grounds of appeal and other information are detailed in the papers in front of members. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Any questions for Ms. Mackay? Okay, as I said earlier, we did visit this morning. I would feel that we need some legal advice from our legal advisor before we proceed. Is that something that meets the agreement of the committee members?
Would that be in private?
That would be in private, yes, Councillor Nicholl. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, we're happy with that. So, Mrs. Forsyth, can you perhaps just remove the members of the public while we go into private session, and then once we've done that, they'll be welcome to rejoin us while we consider the case.
Absolutely. Could I just Okay, convener, that's the parties back in the meeting.
Okay, thanks for that, Sarah. Okay, welcome back to the DMRC meeting. Apologies for the delay again. We've had a discussion with our legal advisor, and I am proposing to the committee that we have a recess to allow members to consider certain items in the paper. So I'm suggesting we recess until 12 o'clock today. So that's round about just over 15 minutes if the members are agreed with that. Okay, and we will return at 12 o'clock. So if you can stop the live stream again, John, that would be good.
Can I just double check with John that the stream's live? Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to the DMRC meeting. Elected members have taken some time to consider some issues, so we're now ready to resume the meeting. Can I ask the elected members if they now have all the information they need to make a decision?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Brays.
Well, sorry, convener, but just as a matter of process here, I personally feel that I would really like to see costings from the developer before we make any decision on this.
Yes, I mean that was certainly something that we did discuss in the private session. I just wonder whether there was a logical process we could take here, and the first step was to consider whether this development was part of a phased development. If not, then I think your question would be valid, and we would need to look into that, and we could get some a description of what is maybe required from our planning advisor. But I think our first question is to ask, is it part of a phased development? So I don't know whether, I see Councillor Nicholl's got his hand up as well. So have you got, what's your comment, Councillor Nicholl?
Right. I feel time has lapsed since the project. No con had been paid for the 9 flats, and I don't feel it's a phased project. And it was a new contractor that applied for the new application, and I say there should be no contribution liable for this, and I would uphold the appeal.
Okay, that's a proposal from Councillor Nicholl. You got any thoughts, Councillor Fairweather?
Convener, sorry, could I maybe just interrupt in 1 second? And I'm quite happy to take some legal advice from Miss Magson on this, but I think members required to determine whether any further procedure is required before we actually go on to receive comments or any motions or amendments from elected members. And I think it's something that we would need to decide or determine in advance of any comments being made, whether further procedure is required.
Well, I did ask if they had enough information, and I think, well, I got nods from Councillor Nicholl and Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Brays then said that he would need to see costings, which I think is part of, that might be necessary, but it depends on what our view was and whether this was a phased development or not. And I was trying to sort of go back to the start and say, well, what's our view on that? And then take it forward from there. And Councillor Nicholl has made the point that he does not think it's a phased development. I'd have to say I had a look at the planning history on this one myself. So the application, from what I can see, was withdrawn in 2016. It was refused in December 2016. The 9 flats were approved in February 2018. This application would appear to have been in December 20. The application was then approved with the conditions in 21. So it looks to me like the applications that relate to this particular house overlap the period of time in which we approved the 9 flats. So that would suggest to me that it was going on at the same time. Now, I would regard that as a phased. I mean, if there had been a significant time gap between approval of the 9 and this application, then I could see them as separate and distinct. But my reading of the planning history is that this was going on at the same time as the development of the former hotel. That's my reading of the times from what I can see in the report. So I don't know what other members' view would be of that.
Convener.
Yes, on you go, Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, it is a difficult one, right? Is it phased or is it not? Looking at the planning history, right, and going back to 2016, and what they've actually applied for, and eventually and then what has eventually been what eventually has been approved. But I was looking at I'd gone down to page. I was at page 107, and and it says at the bottom of that, report of handling also confirms that there is no relationship between the appeal site owner and the owners or developers of the site at the former Banmuir Hotel. Benefit of the doubt, is that right? Is that the way we've got right? I've got to go on this, and benefit of the doubt, I'm going to say it's not phased, and so therefore I would agree with Councillor Nicholl that the condition is neither necessary, relevant to the development to be permitted, nor reasonable, and condition 1 should be removed from the decision notice. That's my thoughts, Convener.
Okay, I've just looked at that page, and that's certainly what it's saying. So you're effectively agreeing with Councillor Nicholl that there should be no developer contributions required because it's a separate developer and it was done at a different time. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Brace? You're muted. You're muted, Kenny.
Can't say I'm comfortable with it, Convener, but I think this is a really grey area, and this is why I was bringing up sort of process as to what happens next, because we've got a situation here where if we agree to this removal of condition 1, there will be no contribution made on 10 houses to be built in this house, on this site. And my concern is that if we agree today not to consider this to be a phased development, then we're going to land up in a situation, or we could land up in a situation where there's no development contribution paid on the 10th house, when perhaps there would have been had it just been a completely new application from square one. That's my concern. My concern is that basically whether or not this is development or not, if a contribution would be due on that house, and if we just decide today to not take a what we would be doing then is to be saying, no, we're not taking £45,000, but we'll end up taking nothing at all from this, what we would be considering to be a completely new separate application and development. And I would just, that's why I was really quite keen to see what the costings, and see if there would be a development contribution required from them. Because, and maybe we need advice in the process here. If we just agree not to enforce condition 1, does that mean that there won't be any condition 1 put on any site at all? we won't be taking any contribution from any development on that
I
side.
guess any further planning application has to stand on its own merit, so we can't impose a condition on a future planning application. We've got to consider this one, which has been approved with condition. I have to say I share a lot of you, Councillor Bray's reservations about this, that if we don't collect any developer contribution on this one, we're kind of it just doesn't feel right to me. But I guess three options really. One option is to uphold the appeal and remove condition 1. Option 2 is to apply the mistake, basically reject the appeal and go with what the officers originally put forward, which is the full contribution. And the third option to apply a proportional contribution, which I think is supported by Scottish Government policy and also our own procedures. And we might require a bit of advice here from the planning advisor as to how that would be done in terms of what is contribution. So I mean that for me are our three options. I don't know whether our planning advisor, Ms. Mackay, could maybe take us through how, if we went for option 3, which is a proportional contribution, how that could be arrived at by the committee. Do you want to have say something, Ms. Mackay?
Yeah, I'm happy to, convener. The supplementary guidance also allows for the possibility of a developer to submit a viability statement, and you may wish to consider that option. And to do so, they would need to go through our process, which is available to fully read, but I'll go over some of it just now. So to do so, you would need a copy of the development appraisal, which sets out the allowance made for developer contributions in affordable housing. It should also contain cost estimates, which include a detailed breakdown. It should also include information on additional development costs pertaining to the proposed development with detailed specifications, including it should have a report detailing the nature, extent and the financial implications. It should include projected market valuations for each property within the development and an indication of the time scale for completion of each property. Now that would need to be so, and our property service would evaluate that to see the impact of the contributions on the proposal.
Okay, that really was the sort of act that Councillor Brace was suggesting, and one we'd have to check with our legal advisor what the correct process, or maybe Mrs. Forsyth might know, but we could potentially defer a decision until the developer had made that submission, and then we would come back at it and then consider what would be appropriate. I'm looking for advice there, either from Mrs. Forsyth or Ms. Magson.
I think from what you've said, you've got the three options. The third option I am interpreting as being substituting one condition for another, effectively. So back to deal with the terms of that condition.
Yeah, I think that's correct. It would be saying we need more information to apply some functionality to what is the current condition 1. That's my reading of that process. So once we've got that information from the developer, their costs, the market value of the property, what is a fair contribution for the house 10, I think that is one. I think that is option 3, but I'm not clear at the moment what the views of the committee are. So I mean, we've got 3 options. We can reject the appeal. We can accept the appeal in entirety, or we can apply, we can consider applying a proportional contribution that is seen as fair once we've got the figures from the developer. So that seems to me the three options we've got. Am I correct in that, elected members? And what's your thoughts on those three options? Yeah, on you go.
Yeah, no, I'm still going to. I mean, I would certainly look at option 3, but right, option 1 is right, is still the option that I'd be going down. I think we would be getting into a complete legal minefield if the applicant decides to take us to court and prove that in fact he had nothing to do with the first the developers. So I could see this being just a total and complete minefield. So I'm still minded to say and give benefit of the doubt here that this is not right. This is not phased development, and I think the time scale sets that out. So I would still be moving to option 1, that we uphold the appeal.
Your view is we should uphold the appeal.
Yes.
Okay. Thoughts on that, Councillor Nicholl?
I have to agree totally with Councillor Fairweather. I think it would be totally unfair, even given a proportional amount on that one house when the other houses would be free.
Okay, right. Councillor Brays?
I don't see that it would be a legal minefield. It's a fairly simple thing to ask the applicant, or the appellant rather, to provide some costings and to give us that information we wish to do so. I'd be much more comfortable if we did just defer this until they have the opportunity to do so. I do fully take on board what Councillor Fairweather and Councillor Nicholl have said, but I really think we'll come up with anything that's fair to everyone, including the people of Angus. But I think by deferring, we'll have more information at our fingertips to possibly come up with the least unfair decision.
Okay. I admit I find this one is a complicated one, and it's very difficult to come up with what is the correct decision. I think on balance, I am minded to agree with Councillor Brays, and that we should ask for this information from the applicant, and you know, that as outlined by the planning advisor, and that would essentially mean getting some more information before we could make a decision. Is that the correct legal position we're in? That we ask for that information, and once that's been submitted to council, we come back and look at this again.
And so I think what you're saying is you require. Sorry, Sarah.
Sorry. No, you carry on. That's okay.
No, I was just going to say, I think what you're saying is you require further information, so we then go into that process within the 2013 regulations.
Yeah, and that would still be part of the same process.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be. Okay, right. Okay, well, let's just do this formally then. So we've got I think you had a sort of motion, Councillor Nicholl, which you mentioned some 10 minutes ago, which was to uphold the appeal. Is that correct? And I'm assuming Councillor Fairweather, you're seconding that.
Yeah, I will.
And Councillor Brays, you essentially outlined an amendment to that motion, which is to ask for further information, which you articulated.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm willing to second Councillor Brays' amendment. So we can just go to the vote, can we, Mrs. Forsyth?
Yes, convener. So the motion by Councillor Fairweather, seconded by Councillor Nicholas, to uphold the appeal and remove condition 1. Sorry, have I got that the wrong way round?
Yes, the other way round, Sarah.
Sorry. So the motion by Councillor seconded by Councillor Fairweather, is to uphold the appeal and to remove condition 1. The amendment by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Duff, is to defer consideration of the appeal for further written information in the terms as outlined. Please vote motion or amendment. Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Brace.
Amendment.
Councillor Fairweather.
Motion.
Convener, there's 2 votes for the motion and 2 votes for the amendment. You would therefore have the casting vote.
My casting vote will be given to the amendment.
So the decision is to defer for further written information, the terms of which we just need to clarify, timescales, etc.
That would be correct. Perhaps we need some advice from Ms. Mackay, what would be appropriate there?
I think we would need to establish with the applicant and the agent what an appropriate timescale would be for them to actually gather the necessary information if they have any queries in relation to it as well. Although, as I have already stated, it is freely available in the supplementary guidance. They may require a little bit more time than usual, given we're going into the festive period. I think we would also need to take into account that our property service would need to have time to evaluate the information that was actually provided to form an opinion on that. So I'm unsure of timescales unless I actually have timescales provided by the applicant or agent and we spoke to our property services.
Yes, Mrs. Forsyth, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, convener, it's just in terms of the regulations, in terms of the notice, we actually have to specify the date on which such further representations or information are to be sent to the appointed person. So, I mean, I know that we have some of the parties available. I don't know if we can ask them that question now or whether we specify the date, and if there is an issue with that, then perhaps we could come back to members.
Well, could I perhaps suggest that we set a date of the 31st of January 2023, and the applicants who are on the call now, whether that would be a reasonable timescale for them? Is that a way forward?
Yes, I think that's sufficient from my point of view, unless something else to add to that.
No, that seems reasonable.
Okay, can we ask the applicant or their agent whether that deadline would be acceptable to them?
Mr. Stewart is available, I think. Okay.
Afternoon, do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
Hi. Slightly confused on this one. Yes, of course, we can provide costings for the unit that we have proposed, but that's all we can do. So we'll have a sales value for that, we'll have the costs associated with that, but I'm not sure what will be achieved by producing that.
I wonder whether it's appropriate for me to come in. I think the decision has been made by the committee, and the only point is whether information can be provided, and you're looking for a date that can be done by.
I think that's right, and my suggestion was the end of that. Seems like a reasonable time given we've got the holiday period coming up. I would guess that the applicant or their agent would perhaps have to liaise with the planning services exactly what we wanted, and I guess a point of contact with planning would probably be useful for the applicant to arrange. And would that be yourself, Ms. Mackay, or would that be somebody else?
Yes, I'm happy to liaise with them.
Okay, so I think that's where we are. If the applicant wants to go ahead and do that, then that's effectively the decision of the committee that we want that additional information, and that will be dealt with between the applicant and our agent and the planning service.
Okay, we'll make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, I think...
Convener, sorry, just before we move on, in terms of the regulations, again, it's just to specify who the information requires to be provided to. So to the authority by the 31st of January, and then just to clarify that we would share that information with our property services. Ms. Mackay, is that correct? And allow them a 14-day period to review that information?
Yes, that would be appropriate.
Okay, that
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, so we're clear on that. So we're effectively deferring this appeal until we've got this information, and then we'll hear it at a subsequent meeting. Okay, we finished that one. We can now move on to item 4, and I think we can welcome Councillor Durno into the meeting, who's been patiently sitting on one side until we dealt with item 3. So we can now look at item 4, which is just let me pull it up. It's the Panmure Hotel, Tay Street, Montefieth, and are you ready to give us a presentation on that, Ms. Mackay?
Yes, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, on you go. Thank you.
Can you confirm that you can see that okay?
Yep.
Thank
Yes.
you.
That looks fine, yeah.
Good afternoon, I'm Katie Mackay, the Development Plan Team at Angus Council, present today as an independent planning advisor to the committee. I can confirm that I've undertaken a site visit on the 12th of December 2022. I had no previous involvement in the application, and I have no conflict of interest relative to the case, the applicant or any interested party. The committee is asked to consider an application for a review seeking an appeal on the refusal of the erection of 2 dwelling houses and associated works at Panmure Hotel, Tay Street, Montefieth. The application site measures approximately 790 square metres and is located within the grounds of the former Panmure Hotel, which has now been converted into 9 flats. The application site is located adjacent to the west boundary of the former hotel building on a grassed area which was approved as amenity space for the flats. There are mature trees along the northern and the western boundaries which are subject to tree preservation orders. The application site is bound to the north and the west by residential properties across the public roads, and to the east and the south by the grounds of the platted development. The proposal seeks planning permission for the erection of 2 dwellings on the site. The proposed houses would be detached, 1.5 storeys, with upper floor accommodation in the roof space. These would be 7.1 metres in height to the ridge, and the materials proposed would be an off-white render on the walls, a concrete tiled roof, and white UPVC windows and doors. The information indicates the gardens would be enclosed by 1.8 high timber fences. The dwellings would use the existing vehicular access to the flats off Tay Street, and the dwellings would front onto Tay Street with parking to the rear. The application site indicates that the houses would connect to the public fill drainage network and public water supply. The information submitted does not make it clear how surface water would be managed. Amended proposed site, floor and elevation plans supersede the drawings previously submitted. These drawings changed and clarified aspects of the layout, including an alteration of the building's positions, clarification that vehicle parking would be provided to the east of the proposed dwellings, and confirming that the existing vehicular access to the former Panmure Hotel buildings on Tay Street would be utilised to access the proposed housing, and identifying boundary treatments. Here we have some site pictures. This is taken from the corner of Tay Street and the Princes Street, and it shows the western elevation and it shows the northern elevation. This is taken across from the site looking directly onto where the proposed dwellings would be. It includes the existing boundary treatment, which would be retained, the boundary walls and the landscaping. In the photograph, you can also see the trees that are subject to tree preservation orders. This shows the proposed access. It serves as existing access at the moment, and it would also serve as access to the proposed dwellings. This photograph looks over to the east of the building. It shows the grassed area and it shows some of the existing boundary treatments and the trees. This is a photograph looking south from Princes Street across the development. It shows some of the existing boundary treatment and the trees again. And another closer one of Princes Street looking across the site in the grassed area. The case officer report, the notice of review and the grounds of appeal and other information are detailed in the papers in front of members. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms Mackay. Any questions for our planning advisor? If you could perhaps just remove the slides from the screen, that would be helpful. We can we'll see everyone then. So no, everyone's happy. There's no questions on that. Do we feel we've got enough information to discuss the appeal and to decide on the appeal? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I really just open it up for views of elected members. Conscious you've been sitting watching Councillor Durno for a long time. Do you maybe want to start us off?
Yes, thanks, convener. I want to keep with the officer's decision because the development is likely to be a risk of flooding. As roads note that it's not clear how the proposal is to deal with the surface water from the proposed development, and Scottish Water will not accept surface water connections into the combined sewer. Also, it's not in keeping with the character of the area, which have a lot of older buildings in Monifeith that are, the character of the place is very well keeping with tradition, etc. And I just feel that the pattern of development in the surrounding area is contrary to TS2 policy. And basically as well, the tree preservation order, an unacceptable level of flooding risk. So I go with the officer's decision on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Durno. Councillor Fairweather?
That's a ditto for me as well. I believe the officers have got this absolutely spot on. So I'll agree with Councillor Durno.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Nicholl?
I've got to agree as well. The officers have got it right, and I would appeal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Brace?
Well, I would concur with my colleagues here. I just think that there's so much going against the proposed development. It's very hard to go against policy on so many things, and so I have to concur with my colleagues.
Yeah, and I would agree with the other four members. I would note also the objections from SEPA, who said that if it was approved, they would ask the Scottish Government to call it in. They're clearly have opposed to it on as it's additional houses in potentially a flood risk area. So I think we're all clearly agreed to reject the appeal. And I think that's probably all we need to say today. So just to clarify, the report 426/22, we will reject the appeal from that that appeal and uphold the decision taken by officers. So, okay, I thank you for your attendance today and wish you a happy Christmas and good New Year.
Same to you
Thanks,
all.
convener.
Thank you.
And to all of
Bye.
you.
2023. Bye.